Hello, my children. I'm Jason
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And we're here to give you a recap and a review a week later of Preacher, Season 2, Episode 3, Damsels. And if you haven't seen this episode, you might want to come back later because there are going to be spoilers. And the episode starts where we finally learn how Eugene gets the facial wound that earns him the derisive nickname of Arseface. All right, Ashley, let's break this down a little bit. I thought it was an interesting place to start with Eugene Arseface, a character that we haven't seen since Season 1, that we haven't seen since Jessie said, go to hell. Were you satisfied with the reveal of how Eugene became Arseface, basically? So, like, he helped this girl, he was in love with this girl, he tried to kiss her, she freaked out, she killed herself because he kissed her, and then he tried to shoot himself. The gun didn't go off, he looked down and bam.
I didn't need to know how this happened.
I mean, you knew we were getting this.
But did I need it?
I'm not.
No.
I'm asking you, how did you think about the reason?
I don't know. I think it's really weird. I think I didn't need to see it as many times as we did. I think a lot of it is probably supposed to create some sort of dramatic tension through the eyes of a teenager, but I thought it was really heightened and ridiculous, to be completely honest. It's definitely dramatic the first time, and it took me aback. I think it's well executed in that standpoint, but I do think it was a little ridiculous even for this universe.
Well, I don't think so, because it was setting up, it's the same thing, we've seen this in Season 1, it's like hell. Hell is they pick a moment that you think is like the worst part of your life or whatever, and they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Now, I will say that this is much better than the version of suicide that he tries in the comics, because in the comics, Eugene and this guy who just kind of like, Eugene and his best friend are really obsessed with Kurt Cobain. And when they hear that Kurt Cobain killed themselves, they're just like, oh, we should do that too, because in a world that doesn't have Kurt Cobain, we should do it. And of course, Eugene can't. It's not the fact that the gun doesn't go right or anything like that. Eugene is just like, he's terrible at things.
Yeah.
So he does it wrong. So this is a much better reason for the reason why he's Arseface than in the comics. But I will agree with you. I did think the moment where it was like this long 2-minute thing where he was like, I'm coming, I'm just a second, Mrs. whatever her name was, and then the gun not working and him going, huh? I thought that was the point where I thought it was too much.
I guess I didn't necessarily, like, I thought that if you were, whatever he is, 16 or 18, like...
Yeah, 15, 16,
like, definitely, like, that sort of event would be the worst thing that ever... I understand why they fixated on that. I didn't have a problem with that. I guess I was just like, oh, she's gonna shoot herself because you kissed her? Like, that to me was, like, really silly.
I don't know. It kind of leaned into the small town high school politics. Like, when you're in high school, and especially when you're in a small town, and you think that that's the worst thing that could have ever happened to you, and you're like, grow up a little bit, honey.
Yeah.
The main arc of the episode follows Jessie, Cassidy, and Tulip into New Orleans, where they almost split up immediately because Jessie just walks into a bar and says, hey, is God here? And then they somehow meet a man dressed as a Dalmatian. It gets really awkward. Cassidy then drops in an old friend who actually seems to help him, and Tulip tries to keep a low profile to avoid the mysterious Victor. All right, Ashley, let's talk about this. So the episode starts off very weirdly. Jessie goes in this... Jessie's plan is to just be like, hey, you seen God? What kind of a plan is that? Even in the comic books, he never does that.
Yeah.
Why does he think that's going to be successful?
It just seemed to be an excuse to isolate Jessie so that Cassidy and Tulip storylines could be fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah, it doesn't seem smart.
It's not smart. I don't know if I think Jessie's all that smart, if I'm going to be completely honest. But this seems like a little harebrained even for Jessie.
Yeah. Okay, now when we met their friend, who spoke French.
Denis. Who Cassidy keeps calling Dennis, and the first thing he says back is, my name is Denis, not Dennis, you, not a nice word for a human being.
Yeah, what did Denis basically say at the door?
So at the door, Denis basically tells Cassidy that he's a giant sack of fill in your own words. I was never your friend, I don't like you, I don't want you to stay here, and I've determined that, the last thing he says is like, I've determined that you are a scoundrel. And then he sort of just like turns away and like lets Cassidy come in the door. Anyway, so maybe at one time they were friends and something happened, and then he was like, I have to say my piece, and then like, you're not gonna go away anyway, you might as well come in. But it's very strange, but also very funny.
Yeah.
And then I like that Denis doesn't say anything for the rest of the time they're there, but he's like, yeah, you can like be in my house, I guess. And Cassidy keeps trying to be like, oh, friend, it's going to be great.
I thought this was kind of boring. I didn't really think anything much happened here, and I was like, okay, my prediction is that this guy, Denis, or Dennis, is going to become more important later on, because right now I'm just like, okay, this has got to be set up, because this seems ridiculous that we're spending this much time with this guy.
Yes, I would assume so, because other than it's funny and well acted, it seems to have nothing to do with anything else that's going on.
Yeah. Jessie finally gets a lead from a bartender who suggests that he check out a lounge singer named Laura Featherstone. And he goes and sees the singer, and you see the singer get kidnapped, and then Jessie saves her from a bunch of weirdos in all white suits with red ties and ski masks. Eventually, he helps Laura escape town, and then we get the reveal that Laura takes off her wig, her name is Featherstone, and that she is on a mission from HERR STARR, the leader of the Grail. At the same time, we also see that Tulip has finally encountered Victor's men. And that's basically the end of the episode, because there really wasn't a lot that happened in this episode.
Not a ton, actually happens in this episode.
As a Preacher fan, I am so excited that we finally get to meet HERR STARR. Finally, 14 episodes, 15 episodes in to this show of Preacher, we finally get to meet HERR STARR. We finally get to meet the Grail. I was blown away that the singer was Featherstone. Featherstone's a very important Preacher character, the assistant to HERR STARR. HERR STARR is the main villain of the Preacher comic book series. He runs the Grail, and his idea, which I assume we're going to get into the comic books, is that the Grail is this organization that protects the bloodline of Christ, and they want to create an apocalypse to basically install their own Messiah, and they actually have a sire of Jesus in their midst. I don't know whether they'll actually reveal that in the show or not, but in the comics, HERR STARR doesn't believe that that's going to do the job, so he gets fixated on Jessie because Jessie actually has a power from God. So he's like, oh, if we have a person who can command people to do things, people will be like, that's a Messiah. So Featherstone's a lot more active in this show. In the comics, she's kind of dowdy and she's kind of like very innocent and stuff like that, and she doesn't really, and it becomes a thing that her arc is that she becomes tougher. So it's interesting to see that Featherstone is like right out of the gate secret agent.
I thought she was really cool, and I liked her sort of pseudo Black Widow, but like she has a personality.
Yeah.
I was really into that. You can tell from her introduction that she's not all that she seems. I think the actress,
when she was the singer?
Yeah. Well, not when she's the singer, because she's just singing. But when her and Jessie have their first interaction, like you can tell that she's playing him.
Sure.
And I think she does a really good job at like bringing an emotional depth to that character. You can tell there's history there. I like that the bartender, the African American gentleman who sent Jessie to find her, was like part of their the Grail. The
Grail.
Their weird organization.
He's a recurring actor. He's going to be a recurring character on this season. He is an actor from Timeless. I like him a lot. He's a good actor.
Yeah, I thought it was cool because I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have put that together otherwise, and that was to me some of the most interesting parts of this episode was seeing Jessie get played by this sort of larger scheme that's going on.
Very easily. He got played very easily.
Well, we said Jessie's not that smart. I also really liked the fight with all of the dudes in the white suits.
Yeah.
Good job, Dominic Cooper. You did a lot of that on your own.
It was
great.
It was mostly him.
Yeah. There's a couple overhead shots with some big fan type kicks where you can tell it's not. The stuntmen also did a really good job. Preacher has pretty solid fights, and since they've upped their violence factor, I'm super into it.
Yeah. All right, what did we think that Tulip finally gets confronted by the Victor guy? In the laundromat.
In the laundromat, yeah. It doesn't super pay off. I think that's something that's going to happen next episode. It's something I'm interested in because he has been. Yeah, I love this version of Tulip. I
do too, but I just don't care about like the. It's a storyline that we've seen done to death in media. Is the fact that like even John Wick does it. The person that runs away from the gangster, and then when they meet up with the gangster again, the gangster's like, "Why'd you leave me?"
Well, it's also really convenient that like they go to New Orleans and like.
By the way, the light of God is on me right now.
I was just in like that's the voice trying to Genesis. It is very convenient that they come to New Orleans and that she had been running from New Orleans and has this past there. But I think that it could be part of maybe the larger conspiracy that's
Sure.
going on.
I
And
don't
so
know.
I'm interested in that. And I just like Ruth Negga a lot, and I like watching her act. So even if it's silly and contrived, I'm there for it.
All right, let's go into the rating for this episode based on a scale of 1 to 5. Ashley, what do you give Damsels?
I think Damsels is probably the weakest of the 3 episodes that we've
Yep.
seen so far this season.
Agreed.
I still think it is miles above some of the stuff that we got in season 1 where absolutely nothing would happen. So I'm going to give it a 3. I think it is definitely a step down, but if some of the more interesting storylines coalesce next episode, I am willing to give it a pass. How about you? What are you going to give Damsels?
I agree 100% with you. This is mainly a setup episode. A lot of this is setup. I kind of wonder if this season's mainly going to be getting rid of Victor and the Grail. Because this is also, by the way, this is the 3rd episode in a row that we've had a Easter egg or a nod to Jessie's grandmother, the Angelels, or the Langels. Langels.
The Angels.
Which is making me wonder if they're going to be season 3.
Ooh.
Which is very interesting because in the Preacher comic books, he does that storyline first before he meets the Grail. So it's interesting that they flipped it. Also, his grandmother does live in Louisiana.
Interesting.
So I kind of wonder, or maybe they'll rush through and we'll see Grandma this season. But I have a feeling they're going to, based on their progress, Grandma's season 3 and Grail is this season. I'll give it a 3. Solid setup. I think we're leading into a lot of stuff. But yeah, of this new season, the weakest of the bunch, but definitely way stronger still than anything in season 1.
Yeah, definitely.
So go down to the comments, tell us what you thought about this episode, and while you're down there, click subscribe.
And why not click on one of the videos that's popping up on the screen? And for more exclusive geeky content, go to patreon.com/Jawiin.
We'll see you tomorrow night for another Preacher.